I feel like the hot topic this week is really I Create. So I want to start with that. David, you were at the investor briefing and you described it. Did you say it was a hot mess? What happened?
AGM Kalila,
AGM.
AGM. I think.
Yes, the AGM, not investor briefing. So give us the first hand account of what happened.
No, so like I wasn't expecting to go to the meeting. Like I was doing some work and I said, should I go? Should I not go? Decided to go. I joined in. You know, Arlene was presenting about the way forward for I Create. The overall group. Gave context on the institute and how it is still recovering from the pandemic impact. Gave an update on Visual Vibe and expanding the screen boards. You know, gave an update on Get Paid. So had the auditor's report, reached resolutions. So for those who don't know what I'm talking about, if you buy stock or shares in ordinary shares in a company, each year there's something called an annual general meeting that is held. And from this AGM, you know, you vote on matters concerning the company. So the first matter would have been in this case approving the company's audited financial statements in the case of 2022. That resolution went through, nobody took any relative, concern with that. Then resolution 2 for iCreate, had 8 items. And like other companies, with iCreate, every director has to retire and be reelected every year. The only other company on our market that has a similar structure is Scotia Group Jamaica. Otherwise, you typically see 1/3 of directors, retire and being re-elected by rotation every AGM. So, you know, somebody proposed, somebody seconded, and the company secretary, highlighted, hey, Surgical investment, they went here with the resolution, and then he stumbled for a second, and then he's like, uh, you know, Kintai Holdings was in favor, and he's like, oh, sorry, Kintai Holdings votes against the resolution, and E-Media Group also votes against the resolution. At that point, he was just, a little bit surprised, trying to process, the legal and, the whole situation regarding, this decline resolution, going to communist articles and so on. So he said, all right, I'm going to continue our resolutions in the meantime and then come back to the director resolutions. Resolution 3 concerning director remuneration, that was, approved. Resolution 4 regarding the appointment, or I should say the reappointment of the company's auditors, Sajikor and everybody else in favor, Kinta and E-Media against. Then we had the resolution 5, which was
And
a special
Kintyre and E-Media is Tyrone, right?
connected to Tyrone, yes. So he was actually the proxy holder or representative for E-Media and Kintyre at the AGM. And both of those companies combined have a voting interest of 52% in iCreate. So what typically happens is that when you go to AGM, show of hands, if you have more hands for or against, the resolution is carried that direction. Tyrone, came and requested a poll, which meant that each share you own becomes a vote. So if you have the most shares, your vote effectively becomes the end result of the resolution. So special resolution came up, Kintai and E-Media voted against it. We took a quickly to recess, people were just discussing and talking, like, I saw Ivan and, Arlene on one side talking, saw somebody else talking to Tyrone, like, we're all just like, what just happened? Because typically you go to an AGM, the resolutions, especially the ordinary resolutions, just typically get processed without any, blockage or, difficulty. We come back, Dimitri, says we have to go through the resolutions regarding the regular directors. Uh, you know, Adrian Smith and Lauren Peart, they got the blessing of Kinta and E-Media. But a regular director, was shown the way out. And because the resolution was not approved, they effectively retired at that same time. After that, Dimitri took about every 20 minutes who is the company secretary, by the way. He took about 20 minutes to just go through, the company's act, acquisition articles. And at that point, when we reach any other business, that segment of the meeting, Lauren Peart said, hey, I'd like to propose Tyrone Wilson as a director of I Create, to be appointed as the director of I Create. And then Tyrone, in his capacity as proxy holder for both Immediate and Kinta, seconded the resolution. And like that, boom, I Create's board went from 6-3, with Tyrone back at the helm of the business now. So like that's just how it happened in such a swift and unexpected fashion. And the last time you would have seen investors, well, that's you'd have seen a major poll that did not go in what investors anticipated, was Carib Cement's 2021 AGM, whereby they used their majority interest to force the royalty in to the company's fee structure going forward. So while you'd have seen that notice or release saying, hey, majority shareholders voted in favor, it was really just Kinta and Immediate saying, hey, we want this particular direction. Not necessarily that other shareholders in the room were like, hey, I vote in favor. That's not what happened. It's just really based on the fact that a poll was done and the shareholder was present and directed their will. That is how we end up with Tyrone coming back on the board, and we've seen these directors being pushed out of the business.
So even though Tyrone had resigned as CEO, he still essentially had control of the company via Immediate and Kintyre.
Correct.
And so now, go ahead.
I was going to say, the last time, would have seen a director being voted, last 2 times that I've seen a director being voted down in terms of the re-election back to the board, would have been back in December 2021 when Peter Shane was voted off Elite Diagnostics Board amid the whole Alliance Financial Services saga. And prior to that, I believe it was Supreme Ventures in either 2020 or 2021, where a larger interest actually voted against the re-election of a particular director. So it's not that these things are not necessarily unexpected, but in the SVL case, that wasn't on a poll. In the case of Elite Diagnostic, that wasn't by a show of hands. So in that case, shareholders present, spoke their interest through their vote, not necessarily by a poll where the person with the largest interest directed the end result.
So what was the reaction of those directors who were voted out? Because Arlene just did an interview on this show last week about the direction of I Create. And then you have Ricardo, who's been a champion for Tyrone, at least in public, over the past several months.
Well, something to remember is that Ricardo and Dana Joy Wint, the two directors actually were voted out. They were not present at the AGM. Most of the AGM had persons from Get Paid or I Create or from Visual Vibe. There are few shareholders, present to that extent. But otherwise speaking, Ricardo and Dana Drewint were not present at the meeting. It was Dimitri Adams, the company secretary. You had Lauren Pierce, you had Adrian Smith, you had Ivan Carter and Arlene Martin. When I saw the reaction on their faces, that they were just shocked as well. Like, nobody expected this, turnaround or result at the AGM. Everybody was expecting it to be a typical meeting, start at 10 o'clock, by probably 11:30, while finish, go home and eat our dinner. No, this meeting went as far as almost 1 o'clock, which is not the typical length for an AGM or a company of I Create size. So, you had persons present, even staff members, they were just surprised that the developments, Arlene and Ivan probably were not happy at what just happened, because remember when Tyrone stepped down back in August, Ivan had to become the chairman of I Create and Arlene had to step in, as interim CEO and guide the company through a time when it was suspended by the JSC from trading. And on top of that, having to deal with, the costs related to the Visual Vibe acquisition that is still ongoing.
So this AGM was in person?
It was in person. It was not streamed. So as somebody present said, this was the AGM of the century. You had to be there to actually experience it. No, I'm serious, Kadia. Like, while we've gotten used to the last 2-3 years having these virtual or stream meetings, still have some companies which will only have in person, and I think it was last year, iCreate did have some level of, streaming for their meetings, but this year that wasn't the case. So unless you were there, you would missed all of these developments as they were happening.
So at what point did Tyrone announce that he's coming back as CEO? Did he do that at the AGM?
No. So if you actually checked, sorry. So his announcement to come back as CEO came through the press release.
Okay.
Because as the meeting was finished, like most of us just stepped out of the room and just went about your business. There was no reason to really stay after that point because you'd have had a shift in the board, Tyrone stepping in. There was no reason to stay at the AGM any longer at that point.
Interesting stuff and interesting times ahead. But I do notice that the market appears to have reacted positively.
Nah, you have to contextualize it, Kalila. Unless you are present at the meeting or the meeting was being streamed live, the market would not have been fed that information on Friday. So that's one thing. And while the stock price would have marginally went up yesterday on Monday, today it halted at 59 cents and closed on at 61 cents. So while it would have closed for about around 78, 80 cents on Friday, it's traded back down today, with some level of higher volume. So that feeding of information was relatively delayed because in the meeting was occurring at live stream where persons could be seeing the developments as they progress to make their actions through buying or selling shares in the market. It was an after event thing where somebody told her he saw the release and they're getting more details as days go by to see these price developments.
Okay, well, let's give it a few more days to see how investors continue to react to this news. Thank you so much for that summary, David, of what took place at the I Create AGM and all the latest developments. So let's head back now to who we have. Peter from JMMB. Welcome back, Peter. I know I had you in the background. Before we start commenting on the other issues, anything you want to add, like your reaction to what happened at I Create?
Well, it's. I think this is apart from being the AGM of the century and entertaining. What it also is a lesson in how companies are run. The person who has the majority shares in a company runs the company. The decisions that are made, ultimately, the majority shareholders, run the company. The importance of AGM, the importance of understanding the dynamics of how a company is run and the corporate governance, the entire structure, how decisions are made, how directors are put on and taken off. I think this is an excellent lesson in that. We'll have to see how it plays out over time and how shareholders respond, whether or not they'll reward him and there'll be a turnaround of events. So we'll wait and see. For me, it's any opportunity that the market gets to understand how investments work. When you are buying stocks, you are actually investing in a company, the lifeblood of that company, in terms of its sales and how it operates. You need to understand that when you're investing. And I think this is an excellent test or an example of that. And I am watching to see how it plays out.
Okay. So the next big development so far of the week. Do you want to add something, David?
Yes, I'm looking at the comments in the chat, and for context, so the person said they didn't see the AGM advisory. So what happens is that my companies release their annual reports and usually contains the AGM advisory, but the thing is it isn't reposted as a separate notice on the JSE. So the AGM notice and the resolutions were in iCreate's 2022 annual report, but if you weren't aware that annual report was posted, it might have missed you. Because that same person is asking questions in the chat, and it's kind of good to give this clarity for persons to understand, how these things work. Because if the company doesn't include the AGM notice in the annual report, it's usually published in the JS and the JS's website after. And if you're a shareholder, you usually get it in the mail or via email as well.